What's happening, my friends? Welcome to this episode of Carseats and Coffee. I'm your host, Thomas McMahon, and in this episode, I'm bringing on my man, Silvio Dobrovat. Let's do it. What's up, brother? Welcome to the show. Silvio, last time we spoke, man, I've been excited about this episode for a while because as you and I talked about last time, when we first met up, you actually approached me. We're out at the Arete thing. And I happened to have a chance to talk about the podcast, but I told you I dropped the ball on it before and I was kind of done with it. But it was an opportunity to put myself on the spot, and it was like, it just came. It was one of those things, it's like, I got to get it out there. Talked about it. You came up at the end. You were chatting with me, and you were one of the significant people that actually made me feel like I can do this again and I need to do this again. So I'm super honored and excited for this episode.
I appreciate it. I look forward to this episode as well, man.
Right on, brother. So the way I like to jump into it, I want to know what makes Silvio just excited in life. Let's talk about your business stuff. Then we'll jam into your family, and let's talk about the things that you do on the side that just get you going. And just give us a little background.
Yeah, man. I guess what excites me is a challenge and opportunity. Opportunities excite me. So, I'm a general contractor by day, and that's my bread and butter. We remodel, we build homes, and that's kind of my bread and butter, and that's kind of something I fell into because my dad was a general. And it's cool. I shouldn't complain, but it's not, what I envision doing for the rest of my life, obviously. So I mentioned to you last time we spoke about a franchise. We do some surface protection and trying to really break ground this year and get into commercial real estate, banks, dealerships, and we would treat their tile, their glass, and basically it's like an industrial Rain-X. And water washes right off. So that's kind of the day-to-day stuff. Obviously, family's a big part of life. I have 2 kids, and then we have a big extended family. So every Sunday after church, there's like 15 of us going out to eat. We're always like 20 deep. My wife is from a family of 7, so she has 6 girls and 1 boy. So most of the girls are married, so there's all these brother-in-laws, there's cousins. It's crazy, but I enjoy it, and it's a big part of my identity, a big part of life. So it's kind of what makes me tick, man. Family first, and then all this other stuff is kind of ancillary. It's just, it's part of life. And the hustle and wanting to be better and do better and strive for better is something that I feel is innately in me, but at the same time, they are my motivation to do better.
So sorry about that. You just said something that really struck me, man. You said it's family first, and you have all these ambitions. Like, is that something that just recently came about, or is that like the second you became a dad, you're like, things have just changed, man?
No, I wish they did change like that. They didn't. I had my daughter when I was 24, so I was young by today's standards, anyways. And then my son a year later. They're a year and a day apart. So my mentality at that age, if one can plan these things, was pay now, play later. Have the kids, and I still want to enjoy life with my wife when I'm not a senior citizen. So we're working towards that, and now my kids are 12 and 13, and but it took time for me to kind of really find my dad niche. It was too new. It was too much. I had 2 babies. I had multiple properties, and this was all when the recession hit. So I was just in a daze for a couple of years. It took a while to kind of shake the black cloud at that time. So it was like a perfect storm at that time. We lost a couple homes, so it was rough. But thankfully we've bounced back and bounced back stronger than before, and now I'm really enjoying the fatherhood process.
Dude, first off, I like resonate so much with what you just said, dude. Like my kids are only 16 months apart, right? My two boys. So very, very similar in that time frame. Same thing. I was going through more of a depression, dealing with a lot of change all at once while my boys were like brand new, and I'm trying to cope with that. And dude, even to this day, to be honest, there's like a little bit of like internal guilt, feeling like, did I not give them enough emotional support at that time?
Yep.
And I don't know if this is how you were, but it's like, dude, I was trying to give a little bit to myself too.
Oh yeah.
It's just like so hard, right?
Yeah, but I do regret it. I regret losing that time, because in a child's life, those are the best years, the twos and the threes, in my opinion, and I wish I could bring that back and be more present at that time, but it's gone, and all I can do is make it better now from here on out. But for better or worse, I'm stronger, I'm wiser because of that experience. So it wasn't all for naught.
Oh yeah, brother. I mean, that's what it's all about, right? We can't go back,
Right.
but we can go forward. And I think as men, as fathers, that's important to understand. And and to be able to have like you share that story too, it's the same thing. It validates with me also, like, it's all good. Like, can't get that back, but darn it, today, when my kids come home today, it's time to like grab them, hug them, play with them, do what I can, because that's all that matters. I can only control this from now on, right?
Yeah, yeah. And time flies. It's cliche, but God, does it fly? When we were mid-recession, they were saying, "Oh, it's going to take 10 years to bounce back." And for me, at that time, 10 years it just seemed like an absurd amount of time. Like, I want this to bounce back tomorrow or in a year. 10 years. And lo and behold, 10 years later, it's finally okay. But it took a long time to bounce back, but it flew by at the same time. It's gone. It was real heavy at the time. It was heavy going through it, but it's gone. Here we are having a podcast and, pursuing bigger and better things. So it's a testament to just being resilient and fighting through stuff.
Absolutely, dude. And what were some of the things that you would do with like your kids, or maybe ultimately, let me rephrase this, that you would do for yourself in order to make it so your kids wouldn't feel a lot of that pressure?
Well, it's I'd like to say I was good at this, but I probably wasn't very good at bringing my problems home. Some people are really good at shutting it off and leaving it at the door, and they come in all smiles. A lot of times I wore it on my sleeve just because, my wife was a stay-at-home mom for 10 years. So everything rested on my shoulders, and, it was hard. It was hard to pretend like everything's okay when it wasn't. So, but to that end, I would try to make up for that in big vacations, big outings, big this, big that, rather than the constant trickle of all smiles. So for some people, it's always all smiles. For some people, I felt the need to make up. So that's what I would do.
Absolutely, my man. And don't you feel like your kids are just going to read through the fake smiles anyway?
I do. Kids are smart. Kids watch.
They are.
Kids watch. They watch, and they they study. They don't care what you say. They could read right past your words, right past your fake smile. That's why it's important to be on our best behavior as fathers, because they do what we do, not do what we say, right? So
Absolutely, man. Let's talk about, you said some of the big trips. Is there any trips or any memories like with your kids that you're so glad you either went on that trip or created that memory?
Yeah, so probably the biggest one is I'm from Romania. We came here in 1990 after the Iron Curtain fell. So communism kind of fell and all that. And we came here yesterday was our 30-year anniversary, 1990, January 8th. We came here. And I visited back pretty frequently by myself or with my dad. But then, I really wanted my kids to experience it. My wife is also Romanian, but she came here when she was 6 months old. So she really had no recollection of anything. I came when I was 9. So I still had family and memories and stuff. So I really wanted my kids to go back there, experience it. But not only that, to meet their great grandparents. So I was fortunate to be able to do that, about 5 years ago. And that was a big trip, with little kids, again, flying 13 hours and going through all that. But we were there for 5 weeks, and they got to meet their, great grandparents, my aunts, my uncles, my cousin. And we just played the whole tourist gig, went to all the places, Dracula's Castle, all that. And it was a good time. It was a really good time. And I'm glad I got to do it because then my great-grandfather passed away not too long ago. So we never would have got that opportunity again. And as a matter of fact, I'm pretty proud of this right here. This is from that trip. So this is 4 generations, my great-grandfather, my dad, myself, and my son. And this happened on that trip. So that was a pretty special trip.
Dude, that's amazing. First of all, I love that picture, dude. Thanks for sharing that. That's stuff. That's what it's all about, man. That's what. Can we shift a little bit on that? You said so. You came over when you were 9. You spoke a little bit about your dad. How's that relationship, and what sacrifices and stuff did you see through that whole journey with your dad and all that?
Yeah, my dad, man, he's probably my best friend. He's an exemplary guy. He sacrificed. He came here in 1988, so he came 2 years before my sister and I and my mom could come. And in that time, you were an enemy of the state if you left, kind of like North Korea. So the minute my dad left, we had Secret Service following us around, watching us, really dicey stuff. And we would do, I remember in second grade and all throughout, because it was a dictatorship, they'd have the Ceausescu's, the leader's picture in every classroom, and we would kind of do our Pledge of Allegiance to him. And I knew, and word was going around that we were going to leave the country. So everybody was kind of like, hands off these guys. So we were singing that Pledge of Allegiance one day, and I refused to sing. And the teacher called principal called me in, and there was armed guards at that time. So I got escorted home by a soldier, and he told my mom, we got to come down to the station. We got to talk. We can't, this is enemy of the state stuff. So it was really dicey, but thankfully nothing ever came of it. And 2 years later, we were reunited with my dad. We came here, he got a house, got set up, and, him and my mom have since relocated back to Romania, and they live there, but they come here 3 months a year, basically during the winter. So they just landed last night, so excited to see them.
Dude, you tell your dad I say hi, man. The fact that, man, I can't even process that, dude. Like thinking about leaving my kids
right
for 2 years,
right,
knowing you're doing the best thing for them, but dude,
right.
Holy.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it today. And the way my dad explains it to me, it was a life and death decision. Like if we stay here, we're not gonna make it. So I have to go by faith, knowing that this is gonna be better. And mind you, there was no internet. There was no, like, the cost of international calls was ridiculous. So the way we would speak is we would tape ourselves on a tape and mail the tape. The tape would get to the US like a month later, and my dad would play it and listen to our voices. And then in return, it would go the other way. So it was like that for 2 years.
Brother, I don't
Isn't that
even.
crazy?
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Like wow, being a dad, like
Oh yeah.
man, have you had an opportunity like now as an adult with your kids, like to really just have that conversation with him?
Yeah, we've talked about it, not in any kind of ceremonious way, but we talk about it. It's it's part of our DNA, so it's not that big of a deal as when we tell the story. But
Hmm.
as I reflect on it, it's a big deal. No
Yeah,
doubt
for
about
sure.
it. These are things that shoes I couldn't fill as a dad. I'd like to think I could, but I know I couldn't.
But I But you know what, Silvio, like just talking with you, brother, and seeing some of the stuff, and I know on social media we put a lot of just like highlights of what we're doing, but I've not to call you out on this, but I've seen some of your like volunteer work for your church and stuff like
Sure.
that, dude. And I think that if it really comes down to it, it's like a guest I had on, Kevin Hoover, whose child's going through like cancer, and he said, you don't think you can handle it, but when you're put in a situation, you don't have there's no other choice.
That's right.
And just knowing some of the things I've seen from you, I think that that would just be one of those things that you would deal with. But fortunately, we don't have to put ourselves in that
Sure.
situation, right?
Sure. There is that. Yeah. So we're blessed, and you know, um, I feel blessed to be in this country, first of all, and
Mhm.
a lot of people take it for granted, but unless you know the other side, you can't appreciate it. So, but yeah, I'd like to think that's it's true what you're saying. You get pushed into a certain corner, you're gonna fight your way out of it.
Absolutely, dude. So what, having that like the immigrant background and coming over at 9, like, and just knowing things are different, man. Like, how's that affect you as a dad when raising your kids? Because your kids don't know any difference. They've grown up in this like it's a very privilege driven country, right? So like, how do
Well,
you deal with that?
it takes a lot of effort and wisdom. We I think it starts with my spouse. It's very important to be on the same page. So my wife and I, we come from similar backgrounds, similar, old world parents, and they raised us the best they could, and they did a pretty good job. And I'm just hoping to go a quarter of the way that they did for us, and that's kind of my barometer. Um, but granted, we're dealing with new problems that didn't exist 10 years ago, 15, 20, 30. So it's constant vigilance and wisdom. We all want the best for our kids, and sometimes that means material things, but you got to watch that because you can go too far and raise some entitled brats, and that's definitely not what I want. And just prayerfully raising my kids with a humble heart because I know I don't know it all. And if anybody tells you otherwise,
They're just feeding it to you, right?
yeah, man, yeah.
Um, so let's talk about, so your daughter's 12, right?
13.
Oh, 13.
Officially
Okay.
a teenager as of November.
How's that, Papa?
Well, she was a teenager, a long time coming. So, but I hear it only gets better from here. So we'll see. She's a wonderful child. She's both of my kids are doing really well in their AP classes and doing well at school. Um, just beautiful kids. I'm just trying to draw out of them their potential, and I need to build them up to see that anything's possible, and I'm trying that on daily. So thankfully, I have a boy and a girl, so I get both sides of it. You know, uh, and you have to be a different parent, a different dad to each one because they have their different needs and they're different characters and they're totally different outlooks. So that's kind of a fun thing to watch as well.
Absolutely. What are some of the things that you try to do or say to draw that belief system in them that anything is possible?
Well, they have their own little challenges, which to us are minuscule, but often tell them that mindset is so huge. And we do these little thought experiments, and they try changing their mindset. My daughter in particular, and she, I told her, if you think you can't do something, you can't. You've already made up your mind. Rather, just try. You may not be able to do it, but trying is half the battle. So if you try, you may find out that success was only a quarter of the way there, but you gave up before even trying. So she's applied herself in trying just 25%, and she's learned new things, she's doing more things, and finding out she's capable of a lot more than she thought. So, and that just brightens her up to see that she can accomplish that. So it's awesome to see them achieving something, which then lights a fire for the next thing, and it grows. So it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. I don't have go-getters that, I'd like to think they could do anything tomorrow. You have to coax them, you have to teach them, you have to encourage them. And on an adult level, I think we're the same way. You need somebody to, encourage you. You need affirmation to push you to the next level. And that's why your circle is so important, as we were talking earlier.
Absolutely, man. And do you try to convey that message to them a lot too? Like, look, the friends you have, the people you surround yourself with, it can literally like change your projection in life.
I do. And, there's not as much weight as much as I'm trying to convey. They're not receiving as much weight because, 6th grade and 8th grade, the world is a much different place than out there in corporate America. So, I feed them the best I can, these little nuggets of wisdom. There's teaching moments throughout the day, when they have an off day or when they tend to rebel or they don't want to do something. Those are teaching moments. So I try to capitalize on every teaching moment. And it's been helpful. Like, we don't have the same teaching moments over and over because they get it. So, yeah, but it's, parenting is a challenge, man. And no two kids are alike. And we'll see, man. I don't know what these teenage years will bring, but I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely, man. So what you just said there, though, it's like teaching moments. So that makes me think of like, what is some of the biggest teaching moments that your kids have done for teaching you to be a better dad and just a better person?
Well, holy cow. I mean, that's a loaded question. They, I think, just on a kind of in a general sense, the way I want to approach my learning is the way that they're kind of just innocent and open to it. Right now, though, this transition to being a teenager, teenagers think they know everything. So I don't know if that applies 100%, but my son, he's open to anything. My daughter, not so much. My son, he's open to anything, and I love that attitude about it. So I want to, that's teaching me on how to approach any potential opportunity or anything in business, like ready to take it on. My daughter's the opposite. She's more guarded, and so they teach me on a daily basis, man. There's no one specific thing I can point out, but they teach me on a daily basis on how they react to things and such.
Absolutely, man. I think that's like big as us, especially for us fathers, just to remember that we're not the only ones that are teaching or growing or learning
That's
in
right.
this whole journey, right? Because that's all it is.
Well, it is a journey, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But it's important to be, I think, important to be on the same page with your spouse. Because if there's harmony there, then that teaching atmosphere is a lot more harmonious. It's everybody's like taking from each other. It's not dad is the only one teaching, or mom is the only one teaching. Acknowledging that they taught you something is huge, not only for their self-esteem as a child, but it's going to encourage them to do better and learn more.
Absolutely. So raising a daughter and talking about that, like how important is it for you to make sure that you are constantly showing your wife like that respect, showing your daughter what a healthy relationship is through your actions with your wife?
That's right. No, it's something I'm conscious of, and I try to model what a good husband should look like, because that is who she's going to look for in a boyfriend and a husband. So I'm very conscious of that, and not always on my best behavior. I'm a flawed human, but I try, and I know that there's always four pairs of eyes on me, or two pairs of eyes rather, watching me in my every move. So, but I do have a soft spot for her in particular from that point of view. So I try to model that this is the way it should be in our home. So.
Absolutely. And it's what's really interesting. It's also just as important for us with our sons too, right?
Yes. It is. It is, because in turn he should know how to treat a lady, and being well mannered and caring and all of those things. So it's my wife's done a really good job with both of them in kind of a one-on-one sense. For me, it's kind of been indirect because she's, for the greater part of their life, she was a stay-at-home mom. So she got to, speak life into them and teach them. And for me, it was kind of indirect. Dinner time, weekends. So, and because of that, I think there's a lot of weight on my words because they're not as frequent. So I take great care in what I say and when I say it and how I say it. Again, I'm not always perfect, but I'm aware of those things.
Dude, I love that. I love what you just said there. There's a lot of weight on your words, and knowing that responsibility as a man, as a father, as your role in this whole family organization, right?
That's right.
And just how, like, when you don't take that or understand the seriousness of it, like what detrimental effects that can also have. Right?
That's right. And I think, this is kind of a tangent, but generally speaking, men these days, they suffer from passivity. They're just kind of letting life happen to them rather than being on the offense. I'm going to direct this ship. I'm going to drive this car. So, with that being said, you can choose how you plot your path, or you can just let it happen to you, and then you can't complain with the results if you're just kind of sitting on the sidelines. You really have to take it by the horns and direct it where you want it.
That's it, man. You got to take control. And speaking of that, you say you got to drive that car, and I know you love your cars, man. So that's a big one. You want to talk about that? Like, what got you into that, loving and your passion for cars?
So I've always kind of had an entrepreneurial spirit, and was always like selling candy, just selling stuff. And then in high school, I always ran with the older crowd, and in some cases that was good, in some cases it was bad. But I had some friends that had body shops, and in high school I started buying wrecked cars, and I love my dad. He let me, load up the backyard. I had like 6 cars in 10th grade, all smashed, and I was running them to body shops, fixing them, selling them, making a couple bucks here, a couple bucks there, and I was doing quite well for myself in high school. And that progressed, and I worked at a dealership for a couple of years. That was fun, but not really my thing to work for somebody. And I was like, that's it. So while I was doing construction, I got my license early on when I was 22. While I was doing that, I was also still flipping cars and playing with cars. And then '07 to '09, I had my own little dealership, and I was selling European cars. But then again, the recession happened. Like somebody cut the phone cable. It was just, I had 100 grand worth of inventory. I was like, man, I got to unload this stuff. So thankfully I was able to unload it, and then went back to construction full time, and have just been doing it as a hobby since, and kind of moved away from like European stuff and just doing classics and anything that puts a smile on my face.
Absolutely. So ultimate car, if you could have anything right now, what would it be?
Right now, it'd probably be a GT2 RS, 911 GT2 RS. The year is debatable. The 08s are nice, but a new one would be nice as well. And then, there's different categories, but that's kind of the one go-to. And then there's a lot of classics out there. I mean, there's so many. And I try never to buy the same car, because there's just so many cars to have. I think I've had one car twice, one make twice, but I try to constantly change it up.
I love that, dude. It's so fun when you have like your passions, because like your kids are going to have their own passions. And with that, has there been anything that like your kids had a passion about that you were like, I have no interest in this, but now because they are, you're like, okay, I'm going to give it a little bit of attention?
Well, my son raced quarter midgets for 3 years. I knew nothing about quarter midgets or racing, and I liked the idea of it, but I didn't like the time commitment. I mean, we were gone every Saturday, Sunday, 18 hours a day, and it was just crazy, like sun up to sundown, the setup, not to mention it's an expensive sport. And I'm the dad. I'm kind of expected to be there and be his mechanic, be his pit crew. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just figuring it out as I go. And, I stuck it through 3 years. Bless my wife and my daughter for sticking it out. They sacrificed all their weekends, to help us out. But I enjoyed seeing him compete and having that competitive nature. So I fed into him everything I could. And then, last year he's like, Dad, I don't want to do it anymore. Like, it was getting super competitive, super just demanding. And I think he just wanted to be a kid. Like, he didn't really have free time. We're always at the track practicing. The track's like an hour away. So you load up the trailer, load up your cars, constantly on the road, constantly buying stuff. So it was like a long 3 years in that regard, but I would have traded for the world. It was fun. Got to meet a lot of cool people. And I think it instilled that competitive nature into my son. It was already there, but it just fed it. So I just got to, every kid's got their own thing. I got to identify it and identify their gifts, and then kind of invest in those gifts. All you can do as a father is give them opportunities, see what they latch onto, and then if that's what they want to do, you just pour into that.
So with that, man, because you said like the competition element, you could tell that was important to you. Why is that so important to you to like really push your kids towards like competing?
Well, I think it's a way of life. You could deny it, but it's a way of life. Competition is healthy. We grow in competition. Animals, when you go to train a dog, they will not train by themselves. You train them with other dogs, they're going to train up well. Competition is just a way of life, and I think it's healthy. And, within limits, you got to put restrictions on it. It could run roughshod, but, I think competition is healthy. That's why capitalism works, because of competition. Everything is all competition. So,
dude, I think that's so great. Like, to respect your time too, I got a couple more things I want to talk about. One is minus competition. What is, in this current state that you're with your kids, the most important thing that you're trying to teach them right now?
So, we're a faith-based family. So for me, going to church and making sure that they're kind of spiritual outlook is cared for, and that they're on the right path in that regard. That's probably one of the most important things to me, because that's kind of my family's and mine's our compass, our North Star. So without having that, it's easy to, not have direction or go the wrong direction. So that's really important to me as a dad.
Money. That's great, dude. Last question I have for you here, my man, is if there's any advice that you could give to the dad who's, in your similar situation, was like 24, about to jump into it, doesn't really know what the economy, where we're at right now. What advice do you have for them, dude?
Man, there's so much. Well, I think what I would say is that fatherhood is one of the most challenging things if you're involved, but it's also one of the most rewarding. So, you'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know anybody that had all the answers. I knew people that had experience, but not all the answers. Everybody's on this journey. Everybody's learning. And, find somebody that you look up to that succeeded at this thing you're trying to do called fatherhood, and just observe and learn. That's all I'm doing. Studying my dad, studying my father-in-law, and just watching what they did. I'm trying to do some things better than they did. I'm failing in other areas that they excel. So there's no answer here, but it is a process.
That's it, dude. The answer is that. It's just,
that's it.
Right? That's it. If someone wants to start following you, man, or reach out, connect to you, how's the best way they can do that?
Silvio Dobrovat. That's my handle on Instagram. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, but I don't use those much. I'm mainly on Instagram.
All right, dads, listen, if you get a chance, do reach out. This dude, again, Silvio, this has been so awesome, man. I've appreciated this. I appreciate your wisdom, your vulnerability to share stories, and to understand the importance of what this means towards other dads, and why it's so important for us to connect and feel like we're not alone in this journey, man.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you having me on. I look forward to this since Arete, and I'm glad we finally got a chance to do it.
Absolutely, brother.